This tutorial explains how to surf small whitewater waves. It looks at catching waves, standing up, steering, stopping, safety, and much more. When learning and taking lessons, ideally you want waves that break onto a sand beach. Also, the water should be shallow, far from shore, and the waves should be tiny. It is far riskier if you practice in big waves. It is also riskier if you practice on waves that form over reef or rock. Or even waves that break onto sand at a spot where the water becomes deep rapidly. So a shallow, beach break with small waves is what you want. At such a spot you will generally see lots of beginners and lessons taking place. If in doubt, ask at your local surf school. What's good about such a spot is that the wave behaviour is quite predictable. The waves roll in from the ocean. As the water becomes shallow, these waves become steeper. At a certain depth, these become suddenly much steeper and quite dangerous for beginners. After that, the waves soon collapse and create white water. At first, the white water can be fairly powerful, but as it progresses to the beach, it loses power. Therefore, the benefit of such a location is that you can stay closer to shore for weaker white water and move out a little for stronger white water once you have experience. Now, let's look at getting out, some basic board handling and paddling. Before getting in the water, attach the leash to your ankle, preferably to the leg you naturally place on the back of a board. At a shallow beach break, getting into position should be easy. You can simply walk out. Although you must be a very strong swimmer, since you can't always rely on walking. You should hold your board at your side with the nose pointed at the waves. You can lift the nose to help clear the waves, but the waves should be so small that you don't need to do this at first. What you really want to avoid doing with the board is positioning it like this. Holding the board perpendicular to the waves will mean the wave strikes the entire board at once. Even worse, having the board on the side of an approaching wave means the wave can launch the board at you. This is important to avoid at all times. A board on the side of the approaching waves is a serious danger, even if it's someone else's board. Even though you can walk at a beginner spot, it's well worth practicing some paddling. To move forward effectively, you paddle with your arms reaching deep into the water along the rails of the board. To turn more effectively, you reach out further from the board. If you want to turn a bit quicker, you can push back with one arm and forward with the other. To turn rapidly, you can do this while sitting near the tail of the board to free the nose from the water. At first it will be hard to balance in this sitting position, but this skill is so useful later on it's worth a practice. You should also learn how to paddle when white water approaches. Like before, you must point the nose at the wave. Then to get through the wave, it helps to move at it with speed. The faster you move towards the wave, the less time the wave takes to pass over you, and therefore the less the wave will push you back to shore. As the wave reaches you, you can also push down on the nose and lift your upper body. This will help the board's nose break into the wave, and it will make the white water run under your body rather than into your face. If you struggle to paddle through the white water, then the waves are definitely too powerful for your skill level. The next challenge is catching a wave. Don't worry about standing, just work on your wave catching skills. The overall plan is to turn the board so that the nose is now pointing at the beach and the fins are towards the approaching wave. You lay in the centre of the board with your feet near the tail. You paddle moderately as the wave approaches, then sprint paddle just before the wave reaches you. Keep paddling until the wave is carrying you. In practice, however, catching waves is not so simple. Most beginners fail to catch waves that they should be able to catch. There are a number of factors you must consider to consistently catch waves. If the wave is tiny, perhaps just 10 centimeters, you might not be able to catch it. With correct technique, you should easily be able to catch 1 foot of white water. On the other hand, if the white water is 2 foot or more, it is likely too powerful for you to learn with. The board itself is very important. Board design is a large topic all of its own, so we'll keep it simple for now. On a short board, you are mostly sunk in the water. On a long board, you have more buoyancy and float to the surface. Being on the surface means the wave pushes mostly on the underside of the board. This lifts you and pushes you forwards, thereby helping you catch small waves. Your surf school may provide a foam version of this longboard for safety and board durability. It's critical that the board is buoyant enough to keep you on the surface like this. If the board is mostly sunk, like this, it will be hard to catch small waves. The speed you can paddle with the wave is critical. If you paddle too slowly, the wave will pass over you quickly. Any force from the wave will be gone quickly. If you paddle faster, however, your board is moving with the wave then takes much longer to pass over you, which helps you accelerate and reach the speed of the wave. Once your speed matches the wave, you have caught it. So basically, the faster you paddle, the easier wave catching becomes. So it's important to achieve top speed as the wave reaches the tail. The best way to do this is paddle moderately when the wave is about 10 meters away. Then when the wave is about 2 meters from the tail, switch to a sprint paddle. It's important to manage fatigue while surfing. For example, if you sprint paddle early, you will reach top speed, then you will fatigue and your speed will drop before the wave reaches you. Also bear in mind that paddling is more effective if you sink your arm into the water. Swimming with just your hands will be less effective. If you notice your sprint paddle is slowing, take a break for a while. Weight distribution on the board is the most common area you see beginners make mistakes. It has a big effect on paddling and surfing alike. For balance, your weight should be applied along the center line of the board, known as the stringer. If your weight is slightly to one side, the board will steer. And if your weight is slightly further to one side, the board will tilt and you will fall. This can affect you while paddling or while trying to stand. So make sure to stay over the center line. You must also pay close attention to how you position your weight relative to the tail or nose of the board. Shifting weight near the tail lifts the nose. Shifting weight near the nose lowers it. This has an enormous effect on catching waves or riding waves. Having your weight too close to the tail makes it impossible to catch a small wave. You can see the nose is lifted and the tail is sunk. An approaching wave will then pressure the underside and top side of the tail, and these forces largely cancel out. Sinking the tail is so effective at negating the force of a wave, you can stop simply by sinking the tail on a small wave. Let's look at what happens, however, when you move your weight a little closer to the nose. The nose is now close to the water and not much of the tail is sunk. Now, an approaching wave will primarily pressure the underside of the board. Plus the board is tilted forward a little, so the hydrodynamic forces help you accelerate with the wave. This makes a huge difference. See here how the surfer catches a tiny wave, mostly because their weight is forward enough to bring the nose close to the surface. However, you can't simply think loading more and more weight on the nose is a good idea. With your weight too close to the nose, when the wave lifts the board's tail, you can easily nosedive. Bear in mind that the bigger and steeper the wave, the easier it is to nosedive. The primary way that beginners change their nose-tail weight distribution is simply by choosing where to lay on the board. So for example, if you always nosedive your board, chances are you're laying too close to the nose. So you need to position closer to the tail, and that should stop you from nosediving. Or perhaps your nose is lifted above the water and you struggle to catch waves. Then you need to position your weight a bit closer to the nose. Generally, your toes are on the tail, but every board and person and wave is different, so you need to work out the paddling position that works best for you. If you position yourself so that the nose is close to the surface, like this, that gives you the best chance to accelerate and catch a wave. It's also possible to quickly shift your weight towards the nose or towards the tail. Lowering your chest and bending your knees shifts your weight forwards. Pointing your toes and arching your back shifts your weight to the tail. This skill of quick nose-tail adjustment is so useful. Here, for example, the nose is diving under, but the surfer sees this and shifts weight towards the tail and recovers from it. Here, the approaching wave is tiny, so the surfer starts by sending the weight towards the nose to lower the nose and help them accelerate. Here, the surfer decides to skip the next wave, so sits on the tail and lifts the nose. You now know the basics of catching a wave. Remember, to stop, you can sit on the tail, or roll off to the side of the board before the water gets too shallow. Do not roll off the front of the board, as the board can easily hit you. Once you can catch white water consistently, you can think about standing up. There are different ways to do this depending on your athleticism and experience. You can knee up, you can back foot up, or you can pop up. The slowest method is the knee up. It's good experience and a fine way to start for many people. However, you don't want to use this technique for too long, as it will start to limit you. The key to the knee up is to remember you must apply weight evenly across the stringer for balance. You place your hands equidistant from the center line. Then bring your knees up onto the center line. You can see weight is applied evenly across the stringer. Next, bring your front leg under your chest and place your foot on the center line. Yet again, weight is applied evenly. When you're ready, take the weight off both hands at the same time. To stop, sink the tail or dive to the side. Let's look what happens if you try and apply weight unevenly. Here, the surfer simply lifts the left hand before the right. Now, they are applying more weight to the right of the board, so the board tilts. If you fall during a knee up, it's almost certainly because you applied weight too far to one side of the stringer. The next option is the back foot up technique. This is far quicker, can be used in a wider range of conditions, and doesn't require too much athleticism. You tuck in your preferred back leg tight against the other leg so it's on the center line. Once the back leg is placed, you can use that back leg and both hands to lift your body. As you lift your body, bring the preferred front leg under your chest and place it along the center line. Release both hands together and stand. Keep your weight low for balance. Yet again, you can see weight is always placed evenly across the stringer. Here, however, the surfer places their foot to one side of the stringer. The board immediately tilts and the surfer falls. With practice, you can do these back foot ups faster and faster. If you place your back foot early, then you can use the strength of your arms and the back leg to lift yourself up. When you're ready for a challenge, you can also try pop-ups. You basically lift your weight using your hands and both knees. As your core rises, you tuck in your legs and place your feet along the stringer. We will look at pop-ups more in later episodes. I'd recommend that most beginners try the knee up a few times and then focus on their back leg up technique. As well as centerline weight distribution, you must start to think about tail-nose weight distribution when standing. Here, for example, the surfer gets up with their feet too close to the tail. The nose lifts and the board slows down immediately. If your nose is raised like this, you probably didn't get your feet forward enough. If you notice the nose is a bit raised and you're quick, you can shift your weight forwards to pick up speed. Of course, you might also bring your legs too far forwards, which would lower the nose and cause a nosedive. Once you can consistently catch waves and stand up and stop under control, you should really try turning your board. To turn, you simply lean your weight a little towards your toes, or lean your weight a little towards your heels. You don't lean much at this stage. You may be tempted to lean harder to get your longboard or learner board to turn faster. This would move your weight too far from the center line, tilt the board and make you fall. Use a subtle lean and wait for the board to turn. If you really want to turn quickly, you can temporarily shift weight onto the back foot, lift the nose and free the nose of the water, then your lean will be more effective and you will turn faster. Of course, you can't do this for long because you will slow down. Once you aim across the wave, you have the potential to ride much further and much faster. The greater your angle across the wave, the further you travel as the wave moves into the beach. You may find that you don't move quickly enough to keep up with your wave once you manage to turn. You will almost certainly need to shift lots more weight to the front foot to lower the nose and speed up once you manage to ride across a wave. Of course, you need to watch the nose to make sure it doesn't dive under. Surfing, unfortunately, is not risk-free, but these final tips will help you minimize risks. The less ocean experience you have, the more you need lessons and the more lessons you should take. Most locations have some kind of hazard, such as animals, rocks or currents. Many beach breaks have a rip current, where the water pushed in by waves flows back out. You can sometimes spot these because of murky water or smaller waves showing the rip current. If one of these is pushing you away from shore, it is best to move sideways to exit the rip. If you are not familiar with such things, you probably require more lessons than someone with ocean knowledge. Avoid surfing on your own. Take lessons, take a buddy, or join a group at your local learner spot. The smaller the wave, the less power and less chance of injury. Also be aware of tidal currents. As the tide shifts, these can push you along the beach. Therefore, you need to monitor your position. Pick a point on land as a marker showing where you started your session. If you find yourself drifting away from that marker, return to the beach and walk back to your starting point. Many people are tempted to try unbroken waves early. but I strongly recommend avoiding them until you can at least turn and stop under control on the white water. If you're riding unbroken waves but can't really control your board, you could easily ride into a learner and that would be entirely your fault. Be careful once you're riding into water that's less than knee deep. You could break a fin, or if you fall you could still hit the bottom quite hard. Watch out for other ocean users. As a surfer, you're self-identifying as a strong swimmer with some ocean awareness. That means you must look out for swimmers and paddlers who might have no understanding of surf. In fact, the more skilled you become, the more responsibility you take for other water users. Thanks for watching and safe surfing. In the following episodes, we'll look at equipment, surfing unbroken waves, surfing larger waves, different types of break, and much more.